So here are the answers to the questions from the previous chapter. So why don't you pause the video, tick your answers off, and then go on to the next chapter, which is respiration. In respiration, glucose is oxidized. It reacts with oxygen, and energy is released from the glucose. Now remember, energy cannot be created or destroyed, so you can't say that energy is made or created or produced in respiration. You can only say that energy is released. It occurs in the mitochondria and it's controlled by enzymes. Respiration occurs in plant and animal cells and in yeast cells as well. And the word equation is glucose plus oxygen forms carbon dioxide plus water. Now the energy that's released in respiration is used in various ways. In animals, it's used to contract muscles. In mammals and birds, it's used to maintain a steady body temperature. And it's also used to build small molecules into larger molecules. And in plants, it's used to build up sugars, nitrates and other substances into amino acids, which are then joined together in a long chain to make proteins. Now our muscles respire during exercise, so our body has to make changes to allow us to respire effectively. The heart rate increases and the depth and rate of breathing also increase. And this has the effect of increasing the rate of blood flow to the muscles. And this meets the body's need for the faster delivery of oxygen and glucose to the muscles. It also allows the blood flow to remove the products of respiration, in other words CO2, more rapidly. Now glucose can be stored in the muscles, not as glucose, but as a long-chain carbohydrate called glycogen. Now this is one of those words where you have to get the spelling right. You're not allowed to make any mistakes on this one, because people will tend to hybridize glycogen and glucose and they make glucogen or glycose. The examiner won't allow you to get away with that, so you have to get the spelling right on this one. Glycogen can then be converted back to glucose when it's needed, when the body is exercising. Anaerobic respiration. Now muscles can respire for a short time without oxygen, and this is called anaerobic respiration. In anaerobic respiration, glucose is not completely broken down. The product of anaerobic respiration in animals is lactic acid, not CO2 and water. Now the problem is, if lactic acid builds up, it can cause muscle fatigue, which stops the muscles from working as effectively. But as the blood continues to flow through the muscles as exercise slows and stops, it gradually removes the lactic acid. So there's the word equation. Anaerobic respiration in animals, glucose forms lactic acid. So again, anaerobic respiration in animals, glucose is converted into lactic acid. Anaerobic respiration in plants, and in yeast cells as well, converts glucose into ethanol and CO2. Now if you're doing higher tier, you need to be able to explain that. Anaerobic respiration releases much less energy than aerobic respiration, and the reason is because glucose is incompletely broken down. And don't forget that the products of aerobic respiration are CO2 plus H2O, but in anaerobic respiration, in animal cells, it's lactic acid. So what happens to this lactic acid that builds up in our muscles? Well, it's eventually oxidized and it forms CO2 and water, so we excrete it in the same way. Now the amount of oxygen needed for this eventual oxidation, is called the oxygen debt. So that's the amount of oxygen needed to oxidize lactic acid to form CO2 and water. And this is why we still pant even when we've finished vigorous exercise at the end of a race or whatever, because we are repaying the oxygen debt. So time for a little test then on respiration. For the answers, go to the beginning of the next chapter.